I'd like to think any of the youngsters who I've journeyed with will know that I love them. I love working with young people, and it's been a lovely privilege. I've been asked to go to Dublin to work in Veritas. It's still connected to young people, and it's working on the 6th class programme, Grow in Love. Number one, only for a year, and secondly, it's part-time.
Well, Father Chris is a remarkable priest. He's been now involved in youth ministry here in the Diocese of Limerick for 11 years, together with Aoife Walsh, who's the co-director of youth ministry in the diocese. The secret to youth ministry here in Limerick is young people know that there's a place, a home they can come to, as it were. Some come to what's called the Inish programme for transition year students. Some would come to Lourdes for the week pilgrimage. Some come to the Brew experience, West Kerry. Some then involved in the wider community in Winterest. A bit of time for prayer, conversation, a bit of time for learning.
Chris is really one of two of the backbones of youth ministry. I know that I can go to Chris if I'm feeling happy. I'd share that experience with him. If I'm feeling sad or down, I know that I can also share that experience with him as well. He is popular, not just because he's the cool priest, but because he is someone that we can all go to.
Those who know Father Chris knows that he's a very sensitive person, with a lovely sense of humour added into gestures. Many people have been touched. Not just young people. Father Chris has had a marvellous outreach to older people, people in difficulties, people who are sick, people who are in hospital, people who are getting married.
The life of a priest is such that this is in many ways what we've signed up to. I'd like to think that if the Bishop asked me in the morning to go to Kenya, I'd trust his wisdom in that, and I'd hope I'd respond generously and openly. It's all about youngsters being given the freedom to be themselves and know that they're accepted for who they are, and that's very liberating for them. In the process, there's faith, so that searching and yearning that's going on in their hearts is somehow being met by what we do as well.
Diagweeb Galera Cordia August Fáilte Road. Welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. And my fabulous guest today is a man who's, I can't begin to tell you the depth of his popularity in Limerick, especially among the youth. Look at him getting all embarrassed. It's Father Chris O'Donnell. You're originally, hello Father.
How are you, Mary?
You want to be called Father or Chris?
Oh, Chris is fine. Anything, you could call me anything as long as they say not early in the morning, that sort of thing. So I'll respond to anything.
I always find it very hard calling a priest. I think it's probably the way you're brought up, calling a priest, no matter how cool and Father trendy they are, as by their first name. But I suppose you do get. I suppose you do get the Father trendy quite a lot, do you?
I shouldn't really, because like anybody who knows me knows I'm a disaster anyway. So there's nothing premeditated in my look or what I wear. So the Father trendy thing is more some kind of reference to Father Ted and all that goes with it. So as any friends would just laugh it off because they'd go, Chris is the least trendy fella you're ever likely to meet. But anyway.
But I think it's your casual nature that has seems to have appealed to so many. But we're going to start at the beginning, Father, Chris. You began life in Patrick's Well.
What?
Am I right?
No, close. And it's a kind of you've strayed across a very ecumenical line. I'm from Adair, so Adair.
Adair, I should have known. I taught Irish dancing in Adair.
Did you? Well, don't worry, because Patrick's Well would have broken our hearts every year. I was at more finals watching our club lose to Patrick's Well. But to be fair, while there's great rivalry, we have great respect for Patrick's Well, and sure, even lately they have some great representatives on the Limerick team. So, but yeah, I'm from Adair, so Adair.
Wasn't it fantastic to win again for the second time?
Look, yeah, it's just great for the county and for people and for the lads involved. Like on an Adair front, there's Declan Hannon and Ronan Connolly, and just the quality of lads, and even in the underage we have a few, the quality of lads, they are just fantastic ambassadors, and John Kiley is a great manager. So we've a lot to be proud of, and they've handled themselves very well. So look.
No, I'm not into hurling. I'm not into GA. Anyone who knows me knows I'm anything but into GA. But my colleague who I introduced you to a few minutes ago from Cork, very sour they are, very bitter in Cork when they lose. He said it's nice to see underdogs and the poorer standard players winning for a change.
They're very charitable. We're catching up. Well, I've a brother living in Cork, so I can say nothing, so it's fine.
Very bitter altogether. And then I have a best friend, one of my very good friends, Carmel. Her husband's from Kilkenny, so you know. But I think actually, as a lay person coming to hurling and that, I think probably Limerick is going to do it they're going to be the team to beat for quite a while now.
Well, look, they definitely, whether if they keep going as they are, it looks like they could, you know, go on a run and dominate for a while. But even if they don't, like the lift they've given and the dedication, and as I say, I'd keep coming back to their great ambassadors, like, you know, so we're very lucky in Limerick. The kind of culture that they've created is a culture that you'd be proud of in a church setting, in a parish setting, in a community setting. And that's from the top down. And you see it in, as I say, in Declan Hannon's speech, or Keane Lynch gave a great speech. Just across the board, we're very blessed with those people. And John Kiley, of course, is at the helm and definitely has a great kind of influence on so many.
Did you play against any of those lads?
No.
No, you'd be a little bit, just a little bit.
I'd be a lot older than them, and even if I was playing, I would never be doing any damage to them. I wouldn't be able to keep up. But no, I would have loved sport. I'd have played a lot of soccer and football and a small bit of hurling. Even I started in a new parish last year, so I got roped into a charity hurling match out here. But sure, look, it's any sport you get to play.
Did you win?
Actually, yeah, we ended up winning, but it was between two of the parishes. I'm in a set of 3 parishes out here, so there's no real winning because, you know.
You're in Kilmallock now, aren't you?
I'm in Kilmallock and Ballingaddy, but also we have Effin and Garryandirk and Bulgard and Martinstown. So
I always find that a fantastic name, Effin.
Effin, yeah. I suppose initially I would have been the same, but once you start working in an area, you don't hear it anymore, you know. So. So it's funny how it works.
You know, there's so many plays you can do on that name. You know, it's just...
Exactly. And I'm sure I would have been saying the same. And suddenly now, when you're out here and you're using it so regularly, it just runs off you. You forget it. You forget the other implications of the name. You know.
Yeah. But Father, you started off, from what I understand, as you became a primary school teacher. So exactly. Were you a late vocation to the priesthood?
Yeah, sure. I'd be late to everything, really, as in I'd be good on a time front, but late by the time I get to where I need to be on other fronts. But yeah, I would have taught for 3 years up in Naas in County Kildare. So, and I was very lucky because I just had a great time in Naas. I loved every bit of it. And I'd be home then every weekend for sport or things like that. So I had the best of both worlds. But I loved the teaching. I was very happy, to be honest. And it was a great experience. And Naas is still a massive part of my life. So there's people there whom I'm still in contact with. And just any opportunity to get to Naas. Leaving it was probably one of the hardest things that I had to do. Oh, yeah. But which is a great thing. Like at the time, I was kind of plagued trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. But I'm glad it was so hard because it shows how much it meant to me and still means to me, you know. So
to be a priest.
Well, yeah, I left to go to Maynooth from Naas. But as I say, because I loved it so much, it made the decision, you know, a harder decision. But I'm glad of that in hindsight, you know.
Did you do your teacher training in Mary I?
I did, yeah. Mary I was a smaller college then when I was there, you know. But I loved it. Oh my God, yeah, sure.
I have this image of you of being just barely out of your 30s, if you're even out of that, because you have this young, trendy look. Definitely.
That would be the death on my tombstone or headstone. I will have the lines, "I am not young." It's all relative, and because of that.
And I am not Father Trendy.
Yeah, the few little statements that I'll add. because of it, you see a lot comes your way because they're going, give it to the young fella, and it's just relative to the fact that we don't have many priests. So I appear maybe a little younger, and in fact, I'm not even the youngest priest anyway in the diocese, you know. So that that title is held rightly on a local front by Father Liam Enright, and now we have.
Liam, is Liam younger than you?
He is, thank God, and he's younger than me, and a better singer than me, and more gifted than me on so many fronts. But yes, so Liam would be the youngest on a local front, but now we have a new priest in the diocese from different places as well. So they're taking the mantle of the youngest priest.
And you've never been to my parish. You've never been posted to my parish, which would be St. John's Cathedral.
No. Would you believe after I did a stint there, I took time out, like I say, I duck and dive really. So I took time out of my time in Maynooth and ended up there for 6 months. And then also, after being ordained, I was there for a few months before my appointment to St. Patrick's, St. Bridget's. So they'd be my contacts with St. John's. I was there at a stage when they had a big parish mission and all sorts. So I have fond memories of being there.
Yeah, it's a fabulous parish. I was born in England and made my communion in St. John's and confirmation and and my parents were married in St. John's Cathedral, so it has huge and it's still my parish church. You know, I haven't moved from the area at all. Hate change, Father. But what was it that drew you to the church? I mean, was it this constant nagging? Was it this constant feeling there's something more that I need in my life? There's a higher purpose. There's something else that I want to do, and you didn't know what it was. What is it? Can you define what it is when somebody says, I got the calling?
Yeah, well, see, you've kind of touched on a lot of it there, really. People have ideas about what a calling is, but sure, a calling is it comes in as many different shapes and sizes as there are people. It's just like our relationship with faith and God and so on. It will always be particular to ourselves. So for some people, it'll be a conviction from when they're young, something they always knew. For others, it might come later, and it might be equally a strong conviction. In my case, it was just this nagging doubt that I should give it a try. So it doesn't sound like anything highly even spiritual or anything like that, because as I say, it was just this niggle that was there that I should try. It made absolutely no sense because it wasn't on my radar and wasn't something I would have, to be honest, I didn't want to follow up on it, but also I live by the principle of no regrets. Well, I try, you know, but sure, we'll all have regrets. So I eventually just realized, even though I was very happy where I was, that I needed to do something about this niggle that made absolutely no sense. So to be honest, I went to Maynooth. I would have told very few people, because why would I? I'm not going to be there long. And even I remember playing for my club that morning when I went up to Maynooth and saying to my manager, I says, listen, I won't be around for a month, because I knew the first month was a lockdown, or lock-in, not lockdown. That's
lockdown. We've had enough of those.
We were preparing for coronavirus years ago. But anyway, as it happens, like I said to him, look, I won't be around for a month. And again, like I did with many others, I wouldn't give a reason. I just brushed over it. So I just wouldn't have thought I would have lasted. But that's just how it was. I went to get rid of the niggle in the hope that I'd be back to NACE really, or back teaching in some shape and form, you know. So then
and what was it about that initial months period of lock-in, if you like, that actually cemented this idea in your head that this is the path I'm going to travel?
I can safely say nothing about it cemented anything in my head, because to be honest, I spent most of my time overthinking it and questioning it. So definitely after the month, like, I was willing to stay on only because I will always commit as such, but it wasn't out of any great conviction or insight I got during the month. In fact, many things happened during the month that should have proved to me that you really don't need to be here, you know. But so that month is usually set aside as what's called a spiritual month. So it's a time where you kind of, not by way of kind of, I suppose, inhibiting what we do, but just by way of giving us a chance to step back. Your kind of interactions with the world are lessened. So that, you know, you wouldn't be free to be out and about. There was, now mobile phones were just about then, but you wouldn't, you know, phoning or going home, none of those things were possible because they wanted to give you space to get, you know, listen to talks and get space to think and reflect. But that's just initially to start off. So look, that was the first month, and then as it went on, the years would go on, and at the end of each year, I'd always be in a quandary going, should I extend my career break or should I go back and teach? And to be honest, I'd say the pros and the con list, I would have had more things to say, look, go back and teach, than I would have had to say, stay and keep at this. But I suppose it's not about the number of things you can name, it's the depth of the things that you can name. So even though the things that would have me staying might have been a shorter list, they might have had a greater weight, if that makes sense. So it's always a struggle, and not in it, but that's just how it is. So, but for other lads, like, they would be in and they would be convinced this is what they are and this is what they're meant to be, and fair dues to them too. We're all different, you know.
But did you not feel, as you were doing your training and that, I presume you didn't go into a teacher training order or anything like that? You didn't ever think of missionary? Or is it that you just happened to wander into Maynooth and decide to go that route rather than going into, say, the Jesuits or the Franciscans, or going with going on the missions with a missionary order? Why Maynooth? Was it because it was a teacher, kind of a college as well, that you could teach?
No. Maynooth, because I'm clueless, largely, because all those things you've named, I hadn't even given thought to. I suppose I didn't go to a Redemptorist school, or I wasn't in with the Salesians, or I wouldn't have even known there was a difference between a diocesan priest and a religious order priest. You can't imagine how low my bar was, you know. So to be honest, yeah, I've often thought that, God, would I have gone to the Salesians in particular because of the youth tourism, you know, had I thought about it. But I suppose I grew up in a Adair parish. There was a Father Duggan, we were lucky to have a lot of great priests in the parish, but there was a local priest there. So I suppose that was my experience of church and faith in the parish setting, which meant I ended up in Maynooth, largely without realizing there were other options, which sounds, again, ridiculous and a low bar, but just sometimes things are meant to be, you know. You know,
you lived in a village, and you grew up in a village that's very, I suppose, more than any other part of Limerick, I imagine, is very multi-denominational, or more bi-denominational, if you like, in the sense that it's a church. It is a Church of Ireland and Anglican, and you have Catholicism there, more so than for the little village that it is. You have such a wide variety of religions covered in that little village. So you grew up with a healthy sense of understanding of that it wasn't just Catholicism, that there were other people out there, there were other faiths out there. So that had to have been healthy.
Yeah, I suppose it probably was. I wouldn't have even noticed it. Like, I would have known, like, some of my best friends and neighbours were Church of Ireland, you know. So, like, and you'd always, the Church of Ireland Church in Adair is a majestic church, you know.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and then there's the Methodist Church as well, and so on. So there was all that there. But as a youngster, you probably don't notice these things. You know, I went to a small country school and so on. So, but yeah, it definitely, I suppose, on an influence front with friends who are Church of Ireland and so on, it probably does influence you, even unknowns to you, you know.
No, I know that because my grandmother was Methodist,
right.
And the family are either Methodist, Church of England or Jewish. So it's just, you know, it's kind of back a bit. But so I never grew up under. I knew that they were Protestants and that, but it didn't mean anything other than they're Protestants. I'm a Catholic, and to be honest with you, I just thought it was all the same.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I can understand what it must be. But Adair is such a beautiful little compact. Oh, it's just probably the most beautiful part of Limerick, I think. And to have these communities within it, within such a tiny community it must have given you a sense of community. That's what I'm trying to get at, I think.
Yeah, I suppose, but like thankfully I got that too as well through the school. I was in a small country school, Seantrad, and there was a Mrs.
Oh, you in Seantrad? I was wondering why you in Seantrad.
Yeah, because it literally was up the road from home. So there was a Mrs. Kennedy and a Mrs. O'Brien and various teachers there. So that was the community. Then the GAA is always a great community as well. And then working around the village in different jobs. So look, I'd be very lucky to claim that I'm from Adair, you know. Now obviously people from the outside always have notions about Adair people, which drives locals who've grown up in it before it became maybe a hipster, right, for want of a better word. So the locals, we wouldn't have a sense of it being posh or anything like that. Whereas whenever I say I'm from Adair, people, oh, posh Adair, and you just go, oh God. But anyway, yeah, look.
Yeah, but it is exquisite, and it is, I mean, I suppose because you've got the manor and you've got Adair, Dunraven Arms, and you've got that beautiful church, the Catholic church there. And I used to teach dancing in the Methodist Hall. And but could you ever get a school smaller than Seantrad?
Well, yeah, at the time, at the time it was two classrooms, two teacher school. I think there was about 40 in it at one point when I was there, you know. Whereas now it's grown. I think between Mrs. O'Brien took over from Mrs. Kennedy and Miss Lyons took over from Mrs. O'Brien, it's just grown and grown and grown. So it's a massive school now. But yeah, I have great memories of it, and I was very lucky again in the community, but also in the teacher and like that I had as well. And Mrs. Kennedy, it would have influenced so many others, and Mrs. O'Brien in that small community, you know.
I think what I love about Adair, not obviously the castle, the manor is just exquisite, and JP McManus has done to his credit, has done an extraordinary job of renovating it and all that. What I love is the tradition, the fact that they haven't. I'm a traditionist. I mean, we had St. John's School next to St. John's Cathedral, and the school was the same structure as the cathedral. And that's what I went to. It was dark. It was all dark oak. There was stuffed birds out in the corridor, and all the wooden flooring. And they knocked it to build a monstrosity of a prefabricated building that obviously no roof on it. And it's been knocked. It had to be redone, I'd say, 4 times since 1976.
Right, okay.
And yet the building that was there before it was nearly 200 years old, and would have lasted another 200 if they had actually taken out the floorboards and replaced all the wood. But the point I'm making is Adair, you know, you've all these little cottages that other places would think of knocking and building glass boxes, but Adair has kept on to that beautiful thatched cottage look.
Oh yeah,
almost English cottage thatched village.
It would be a very English looking village, because I suppose from the Dunraven landlords, like it was built at the gates of the manor, and it was a very English style. You have the broad main street, you have a Tudor style hall at the top of it. So everything about it is as if you were in a different country, really. You know?
They're my dream houses. It's my dream house to live in a Tudor style.
Right.
cottage. And if I had the money, I would give anything to live in a dare. Anything. It's just in one of those cottages with the thatched Tudor roofs. It's just, if anyone asked me what my dream cottage house was, that's what it is. Go to a dare, any one of them, pick any one of them, I don't care. But you became very involved, Father, with the youth in Limerick.
Yeah, I suppose.
What brought you that direction?
Well, I suppose it's like anything in what we do, you don't really, well, maybe some people do. I didn't set out with a plan as a priest, you know. You go where you're called or asked, and like based on your bishop's request. So my first parish was St. Patrick's and St. Bridget's. And then while I was still within my first year there, I was asked to go to St. Michael's and the Pastoral Centre. And the Pastoral Centre, there was Eamon Fitzgibbon and Julianne and Adele who'd been working with young people. And then subsequently there was the Father Derek Leonard and Aoife Walsh, and I was asked then to go in and work there. So I was thankfully sure, I wouldn't have foreseen it for myself, but it was the best thing that ever, it was a great thing for me, you know, because I'm very lucky. I love working with young people. Sure, they're brilliant. So it gave us opportunities to be in and out of schools, doing retreats, bringing young people to Lourdes, or things called World Youth Day, or bringing them on a leadership program, or spending 10 days every summer down in Brunagroiga in Ballyferriter. So as you said to me when I started out, what were my hopes and plans? I don't ever have any, which again, to some people would sound really mad, like, you know, surely you should be following your dreams. But I just, if the bishop asks, you know, and if I feel I can, I will. And so the bishop asked.
So can you turn the bishop down?
Well, I suppose people would worry if you turn him down, you'll end off on Craggy Island or something like that, you know. So, but to be honest, yeah, in a spirit of, like, we take a vow of obedience, you know, to the bishop, but obedience is tempered with listening and the Holy Spirit and discernment, you know, as well. So if I had serious
following your own conscience.
Yeah, and trusting and hoping that the bishop is also following that spirit. But like, if you'd serious reservations, you know, I'm sure you could say it to the bishop, and I'm sure plenty of times the bishop will take those on board, and if necessary say, okay, look, you know. But I suppose every lad is different too, because, you know, I could be asked to do something where I'd have reservations, but I'd be willing to give it a go. Whereas another lad, in fairness to him, it mightn't be what he'd feel called to at all. So there's room, I'm sure. Now, I haven't had to use the get out of jail card yet, and I may have to at some point. But for now, yeah, if you're asked, that's how it happens. So wherever I've been, it hasn't been really because I've been looking for it. It's been because the bishop has kind of decided that this will be my next appointment, you know.
It's quite difficult when you finally find, or when, I mean, people become emotionally attached to places and to people and to things. And when you have a priest in your parish, especially like the young, and you know where I'm going with this now, the youth, when they attach themselves finally, because it's the church is going through such a difficult period. And when finally the youth in any country or any town or village or city finally latch on to a priest, a spiritual counselor, if you like, somebody that they can identify with, and the church, you're starting to see the revitalization of the church through them finally, and suddenly you're asked by the bishop to go to Dublin to write a school book, which it takes you in some way, it has created this arc, because you started off as a primary teacher. Now you're you're being asked to write a religious text for primary schools or secondary schools, but you're leaving in your wake a disaster for many, because so much so that the youth of Limerick wrote to the Pope Francis, pleading and begging him not to have you moved to Dublin. And it was only for a year. but such was the impact that you had on Limerick youth that they thought that they could go to the top, that maybe the bishop would actually not send you. What did that feel like?
Well, to be honest, I used to be saying when people were saying, I says, no, it wasn't the youngsters. It was just my mother, pay no heed. She tweeted the Pope. But look, the youngsters, like the youngsters I've worked with, I just loved them, and it was an absolute privilege. And to be fair, it wasn't just so much that it was me being moved, you know, because I suppose they looked at what we offer, and for those youngsters who've been involved in stuff, they would have experienced nothing but community and acceptance and fun and faith, you know. And I suppose in moving me, there was this worry as well that would the things that we had been working on stop. So I suppose it wasn't just tied in with me, but their concerns that, will all this stuff stop? But thankfully, the Aoife Walsh who I'd worked with, you know, and we worked in teams as well, because I suppose you want to make sure that things continue. I suppose if things stopped when I get moved, well, then I haven't really done anything right, you know. So the goal is to try and make sure that, please God, it's not always possible, but when you're moved, that things are in a position that they can survive without you and thrive without me. And actually, like for the youngsters, I suppose there was comfort in knowing there was a Dara Kerwin appointed into my role as well for a while, which was the best decision ever, because he had worked with us on lots of fronts. So again, I suppose for the youngsters, there was great comfort. Aoife, who they'd have great time for, was still in kind of the role and leading stuff. And now Dara Kerwin, a fella who's just gifted, was put into the role. And to be honest, it grew even in strength. So like in many ways, it was a testimony to the programs more than me, and the people who would even put those programs in before I was ever there. Like, so it's great that those things continue. So like, and sure, youngsters there, I love their idealism, and I love the fact that they felt, look, if we tweet the Pope, you know, maybe it could change things, you know.
We go above it. We go above his head. It's kind of like going to the boss when you don't like what your supervisor has done, and you go to the chief superintendent.
Yeah, well, they went straight to the top, you know. But like again, I can understand it from like even that sense. Will things just stop happening or whatever? But thankfully they didn't.
Did he contact you?
No way. I was smiling at going, I'd love for their sake alone, if the Pope did tweet them back, it would have been gold dust for them, and they'd have deserved that. But yeah, I don't think there was ever any response, you know, so that's okay.
Oh, that's a pity, because apparently he's a great man for picking up the phone and ringing people unexpectedly, and his English wouldn't be, I wouldn't imagine his English is too extraordinary. That's a great photo of the two of you behind there. It almost looks like you're looking over his shoulder.
Yeah, well, look, I admire him from a distance, but I'd never want his job, God help him. But we've brought young.
How instrumental, sorry for interrupting you there, but that might go out of my head. How instrumental do you think he is to the church now?
Yeah, for me, and again, there will be people who won't like him, you know, and I'd have friends who possibly wouldn't, but I'd be just like, the stuff that he says, it's coming from a deep place, you know. He's definitely trying to just make the church more compassionate, make the church a church that isn't what he calls a sacristy church, but a field hospital, where you're literally not in just the church building, but out all the time, and literally being a field hospital that are picking up the sick or the weak or the struggling wherever they are. So I really like his vision for so many things, you know. And he's a wonderful turn of phrase and wonderful insights. Currently at the moment, he talks about the healthcare workers being like the antidote to indifference, and he always has lovely turns of phrase. You know?
I find him extraordinary, and I find that he's very much, I suppose, in your vein, in the sense of a pastoral. He's a pastoral pope rather than somebody that, rather than an academic like Benedict, who, you know, I mean, not taking from Benedict or anything like that in the least, or from Pope John Paul II, who I just loved, Pope John Paul II, but for very different reasons. I just find, like you, that Pope Francis is one of these priests who is trying to live the gospel. Yeah. He's trying to go out and wash the feet of the lepers, so to speak, and he's the fact that he doesn't wear the vestments that would be associated with the priesthood, that he wears his own shoes, that he doesn't wear the bishop's ring or the Pope's ring or anything, that he has kind of trying to break with tradition. I wonder how much post Francis will that continue, or will it revert, do you think?
And that would be worrying for me, because like everything about, I'd say he'd do more even. Like he's probably pushed out the boundaries an awful lot for what might be considered the curia, like headquarters in any organization. If you were to look at the GA and you had a new president who was trying things, I'm sure the headquarters, the kind of, would be really alarmed and go, oh God, you can't do this or you can't do that. So I would say, like, he'd push the boundaries even more probably if he could as well. You know, I suppose there are limitations, and the worry would be that, you know, who will follow in his footsteps. And
it would be very hard to follow in those footsteps, because most people at that exalted level tend to be either academic, like Benedict, or John Paul II, or, you know, certainly very spiritual, certainly very traditional.
Yeah.
And he seems to be almost like a socialist in his attitude, which I see Christ as being, having had those socialist values. But, you know, he's somebody that everyone wouldn't. The traditionalists in the church probably wouldn't, and I would consider myself a traditionalist in a lot of respects. But I love Francis. Like that brings me to my kind of next question: how important do you think that the church moves in changes and embraces new ideas, or do you think that it should remain? How do I put it this way? A friend of mine now, her husband is Muslim, right, and she's my friend since we were 4. And he once said to me, see the difference, he said, between the Catholic Church and Islam, he said, and the reason Islam, he said, is still so strong and so powerful is that it's been the same since its foundation. It's not changed. You have to follow its teachings. It doesn't bend to try and bring you in. It doesn't become hippy dippy or modern or charismatic or anything like that. It is the way it is. Do you think almost like you have parents who have strict rules? These are my rules. These are the rules that you follow, and you have guidelines. And do you think that as human beings we like to follow rules and we like to know our boundaries and what they are? And do you think that that's what has gone wrong in a sense with the church, that we've tried to bend so much, or the church has tried to bend so much to the people that it's lost its way?
Yeah, I suppose someone said if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, you know, or for every. But it's a very tricky one, to be honest, because I suppose the culture in which we're in is always evolving and changing, you know, and you have to always try and speak to that culture, and you still hold the truth. What I would worry, you see, is our emphasis in the past was actually probably on rules, whereas our emphasis should be on relationship. You know, like we became a moral code instead of a faith code, a relationship code, you know, our faith is initially foremost about our relationship with God. Now, that relationship isn't in isolation. That should be as part of a community and a believing community and stuff that brings us and stretches us out beyond ourselves. But we've turned it into a moral code a little, so, and people, obviously then feel, oh, the commandments are the most important thing, the rules, the regulations. And you're going, actually, it's the relationship. The relationship is what's the most important. And to be honest, if I'm in love with someone, then if there are rules and regulations, I'm probably more motivated to keep them, or I'm more reflective of them because I'm working out of a love and not a fear. So it's a
yeah. I'm just thinking about, say, that you look at when my mum died, and her funeral was part Latin, because she was very much into the Tridentine. She used to talk to saints like, Anthony, find this for me, or Anthony, she'd be calling him names and everything if she couldn't find something to Saint Anthony. But she was very much into the Latin Mass, and believed that John shouldn't, Pope John the 23rd shouldn't have changed from the Latin Mass. And I mean, it was long before I was born after that, but I find when you're inside in a church and you're listening to the Tridentine Mass, this sense of spirituality, and they got rid of the Latin Mass in favor of everyone having their own language because they would understand it. And yet, if you go to France, you go to Germany, you go to Spain, you don't understand. The Mass is the same, but you don't understand what they're saying. So I feel there's a place for the Tridentine Mass, because it gives you that, almost like you had for the month, that lock-in. Yeah. That it gives you that lock-in time within the hour that you're inside in the church, the bones of an hour, where you can be with your own thoughts, almost meditative time and space, that you can listen to the music, the Gregorian chanting, the priests, just like at Mum's funeral, friends of mine who wouldn't have gone to Mass in a long time said it was the first time they felt they were at Mass, because they were listening to Father Willie Fitzmaurice, or Canon Willie Fitzmaurice, speaking in Irish, speaking in Latin, and speaking in English. And the Latin just got to them, because there's something about this universal language that you mightn't understand, but it gives you time to pray or think or just be silent for that length of time. And I don't understand why it's not as predominant as I think it should be in the church. Yeah.
I suppose it happens within certain communities, so that, like in Limerick, the priests of Christ, the sovereign priests of Christ the King there in O'Connell Avenue. Yeah, so like people do go there and they do like the Tridentine Mass, and for those people that's gold dust, whereas I could get all those things that you've mentioned there. For me, like that meditative thing of going to Mass, I get that through the English Mass, so it's kind of, it varies for people, and there's room for everything, which is the plus, which should be the plus of it,
Yeah. Well, that is true. So you think it's a good thing that the church moves towards the people rather than trying to be having a code within the church that people say, well, I'm just thinking, for instance, like purgatory doesn't seem to no longer exists. We grew up with purgatory.
Yeah.
And you're there saying, and then the idea of, say, taking the communion in your hand. Yeah. Before, you were afraid to even try and get it from the roof of your mouth in case it was a sin. And you were there and you'd spend the whole Mass as a child worrying that you were actually committing a sin because you couldn't get the communion from the roof of your mouth. And I can't put my finger in and take it out, because that's a sin. And now nothing seems to be so much a sin as it used to be, and you're there as questioning your faith because of that.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing is, again, anything that comes between us and God and ourselves and others is going to have a detrimental effect on who we are, you know, irrespective of what faith you profess. Like, I suppose on the purgatory front, we'd still believe that there is that sense that, you know, before we get to meet God, please God, all being well, a bit like going to that wedding banquet, that image that's often used. Well, you know, you want to get yourself in order before you go to it, just like anybody going to a wedding or whatever. So there's room for all that, but I suppose there is a chance we've lost our consciousness of sin and the communal aspect of sin. You know, like we often use the line, sure, I'm doing nobody any harm, or the number of times I've heard maybe someone in confession say, sure, I haven't killed anyone, Father, you know, and it's half in jest and so on. But we tend to kind of overlook. It's not that we want people guilt-ridden, you know, but I think being reflective on how we are is important, because
I do too.
Yeah, it's good for our spirits and our souls if we can kind of be aware that actually I wasn't at my best today, and it's good to find a way of making peace around that. You know, it's not to add to my guilt, it's just to make me better. And sometimes being aware of that, for me, makes me very much aware how vulnerable I am and how weak I am and how much I need faith or God, you know. So it keeps me, hopefully, from being totally blind. Now, I'm sure I'm blind to a lot of my faults and failings, and I need to keep hoping that I won't be. But we could, when we lose our sense of sin, like it's not as freeing as people like to think it is.
And when we feel that we have total freedom, that when we grew up, as I say, when I grew up, you had a healthy sense of fear of if I do this, this is a sin, or if I do that, it's a sin, and I've got to go to confession. I'd say you're a doddle, incidentally, to go to confession to. I'd say at the most 3 Hail Marys and an Our Father.
I'd say I've never given 3 Hail Marys and an Our Father in my life, would you believe? So you'd have to have done murder for that. I know. But again, what happens is, I'm awful in confession. I'd say people have left running out the door. But again, in confession, it's an encounter with Christ and his mercy and his love. And you hear it in and through me or the priest, God saying, look, it's okay. You know, don't beat yourself up anymore. And then for me, the penance, like I will always just usually say something related to the person, you know, like I actually have an aversion to what might be seen as the standard, you know, a formula. Okay, so you did this, this, and this. Well, now that's gotten you 2 Hail Marys now, because again, it comes back to that rules and regulations and not the relationship. So it's about being in right relationship. So for me, confession will be.
You grew up as a GAA man. You should have been used to rules and regulations. That's why you've railed against them.
I broke all of them, I'd say. I'd be all for the black card and the sin bin, of course, now, and things like that. But you see, it's funny. But of course, it's like anything in teaching, you know, you can't have fun in a classroom unless you do have the container that holds it. And obviously, that container will be the structure or the rules or the class code or whatever it is.
You have to have a strong root.
Yeah. So we need a mixture of both, but not to have people keeping rules out of fear, and not to have people prioritizing rules over relationship, you know. So
what was I going to say to you? You're a young priest, and you must have been asked, and you must have questioned at times. That must have been one of the most difficult parts for you when you were going into the priesthood, was the fact that you were taking a vow of celibacy, and you knew you were never going under the rules of the Catholic Church unless you were an Anglican priest who came with his wife and children, which seems almost unfair, if you like, that if you were an Anglican priest converted to Catholicism, you could bring your wife and children with you. But those who were Catholics ordained in the Catholic Church didn't have that luxury. Did you find that hard? Was that was that a difficult process for you to come to terms with the fact that this is going to be my life now for the rest of my life? I will not ever be able to marry. Or do you think that there should be room for married priests? Or do you think that there's no, that these are the rules of the church, and I think no one should marry if they're a priest? What's your...
Look, it's a very hard one, because I suppose when you go into what we go into, you're not looking at the long picture fully. You know, maybe some people are. You're just too busy with that discernment process of trying to make sense of, why am I being drawn to this path, you know? You do know that it will be, and often you hear priests or people say, part of the package. And like, already that sounds quite an impoverished way of viewing it, you know, but I would say you'd struggle to find a priest who can kind of pitch it better than part of the package. I know theologically there will be grounds, and we can put nice kind of teaching around it and so on and so forth, but it's very much, sadly, and this is probably, again, I'd be low on theology possibly, where we see it as part of it's what allows us to do what we do. So it's something we accept and live with. And of course, people often think around it too, that like, I'd be very conscious, we won't be the only ones. You know, I'm always conscious of single people in our world, widowed people, you know, like, so we have to be very careful not to kind of overplay how tough it could be, because there's lots of people who've lost partners, or lots of people who sadly didn't find a significant other and would love to have had a significant other, and so on and so forth. You know, so I'd be very conscious of that, but also knowing that, yeah, it does. It's, everyone thinks like celibacy is literally, they always equate it with something obviously to do with sex more so than companionship. You know. Yeah. So, like, there's lots of factors. But, like,
you know, when I say single people, lay people, non-clergy, you know, I mean, I'm not married and I never have been married, but it's that you know, there is the choice there. If you met somebody, you know, there is that choice. But with you, with priests, you know, I'm a traditionalist. I wouldn't object to a priest being married. Yeah. Having said that, I do understand why priests, why it's there, because I think it must be very difficult for families to be uprooted and moved to different, especially if you're part of a missionary priesthood. It's difficult to travel.
Yeah, it's like, the implications would be, firstly, anyway, we'd always presume like, oh, we would be married if we weren't a priest. Sure, no one might have you, you know, would be, you know, so that's one.
I know.
Yeah, but also the other side of it too is that the lifestyle we lead wouldn't be fair on a family, like, you know, so I have to make sure, like, my family relationships and my friend relationships are as healthy and strong as I can make them. Because, look, yeah, if priests were allowed to get married, and that might draw a few more in, but I still feel it's the lifestyle isn't something that's appealing to people. Because
I don't either. I agree with you.
And like I say that sadly, like, because, you know, if one of my nephews said they'd want to be a priest, I'd worry for them, you know, because I know what's ahead on a commitment front, and the how all-consuming the role will be for them. Particularly, you know, it's not like it's going to get any better unless there's a massive sea change of sorts, you know. So look, it's a very complicated kind of thing, you know, really, and hence lots of priests, and I could be the next, will have struggles around that isolation or that lack of, you know, company.
I don't think you will, because you're so heavily involved in youth work, and it's, you know, it's so fulfilling, and you're obviously so passionate about it. But you're also somewhat of a celebrity as a consequence of Francis.
Yeah, well,
and the youth of Limerick.
it's the last thing I'd want to be. But the reflective side of myself would always catch myself and go, look, too, I have to go. Am I always this busy because I'm avoiding the reality of not having a significant other in my life too? So that you have to always be reflective about it. But yeah, as I say, if I'm working with youngsters, that's very wholesome. That nourishes my spirit. If I put energy into my healthy relationships around family and friends, that's how. And my prayer, obviously, prayer. If I don't have that, then I may give up the ghost, you know. So it's not straightforward, and there's no one answer to it, you know.
And you were you were on our national broadcaster after that, after the episode with Francis, because it went viral. The whole thing went viral.
Yeah. But
what did your family think? Did they think you were going to get above yourself?
Sure, look, they've always thought I was above myself anyway, so it's fine. I know I'm lucky. My family are very grounded, and they know that, like, I'll just do what I do and pay no attention to because anybody who knows me will actually know that I'm actually by my nature more introverted than extrovert, you know, which is fine. I'm okay with that. And I embarrass easily and all these sorts of things. So I'm not your candidate who will be putting himself out there for this. But when stuff comes your way too, you also have a duty to make sure that you do it in a wholesome way, you know. So
but you blush so easily and you get embarrassed so easily that can also be mistaken by your fellow priests as being leaning you towards being very young, do you know, because they're looking at you and they're thinking that young lad over there is getting really embarrassed.
Surely he's grown out of getting embarrassed. I don't know, I think I have a black belt in embarrassments at the best of times. So yeah, I'd be self-conscious by nature, but again, I see a lot of maybe what might be weaknesses or whatever in me is, and I don't say that in a fallen way, but the reality of who I am also keeps me grounded and ensures that I know that I need something bigger than me to sustain me, because I'm not that, you know, kind of fella who doesn't embarrass easily and things like that.
We all get very embarrassed easily, but some people don't. But I suppose the last thing I want to ask you, Father, or Chris, would be COVID and the effects of COVID. Now that you've gone online and you've become again an internet sensation with your singing and dancing routines, not least your singing and dancing routines. And as a dance teacher, I have to admire you, and a dance judge, I have to say, you know, Simon Cowell could be getting a little visit from you sometime.
Yeah, I think Simon Cowell is safe enough. But you see, again, everything there, like, I fall into things not by design, but by, be it providence or accident. Like, during this crisis, like the minute it started, I'm not a social media person again, because by my nature I don't want to be, you know. But I knew that if we as a parish, our 3 parishes here, if I didn't take my phone and find a way, suddenly I signed up to Facebook. I had Jack O'Shea, Marita Doherty, Paddy Hurley, some great people here, Chris Culhan. And just with their help, I realized that just through, literally, I can show you a phone, an old iPod that is cracked, like literally cracked, and then a speaker and a stand. And suddenly I could bring mass and spirituality to people wherever they were. So I prioritized everyone, particularly those who lived alone, and parish radios was strong for me as the ages going around with parish radios, and then Tommy here and Jack helped on that front. So people have been great, but it was just that eagerness to try and go, how can we help people? And so even in the masses and the stuff that we did, you were just trying to bring something that would hold people or give structure to days that had no natural structure, that had no natural anything really. And then, of course, on a Sunday, I'd go, I want to make sure families, we speak to families. They don't have their GA on a Sunday. I wasn't trying to convert anyone. And some people say to me, oh, when this is all over, you'll have loads. And I'm like, that's not my goal. My goal is to give these people something now, not for any ulterior motive. If I can bring a bit of spirit and joy into their world in a wholesome way, please God, that's fine. So anyone who knows me from working with young people, all that people saw on that, I would never have done that at my weekday mass or my masses here in general, because I'm in front of people and you're even more inhibited because you're kind of going, if the good people at Kilmallock saw me doing those things at regular masses.
But do you find that because there isn't an actual human, a physical person in front of you, the Chris O'Donnell, the introverted Chris O'Donnell actually enjoys that more, because it's almost like you're inside in your room, dancing around your room, and sure, no one's looking, but yet when you look at the numbers, there's several thousands.
I mean,
but what would it be like if Chris O'Donnell rocked up at Mass on a Sunday and there was that many thousands standing in front of you?
Well, at the moment it would be another headache, because our stewards would crack up going, we're only allowed 50. But no, like
nonsense.
You have tapped on the truth, a lot of the truth there. Like, for me, it was, my priority was family and engagement, not trying to entertain. Now, some people have had a few goes, and rightly so, because they kind of felt, oh, he's trying to maybe entertain people. And there's a fine line to be walked. Yeah, but there's a fine line to be walked, and I suppose I have to make sure I'm discerning and hoping I'm not. But for me, it was always engagement. So on those youth events that I had, like, I would be always acting the maggot with the youngsters, because, you know, they were like friends, and we would always do an action song. We would always do games. There'd always be joy as part of what we did. So to be honest, anybody who's come through that with us just saw Muin Trasisa, which is a youth group in the diocese that I would have been involved in and that's still going strong. Really, anybody from that who've grown up in Muin Trasisa or Anish or Lourdes, they'd have just looked on and went, there's Chris being Chris. You know, so there was nothing different.
Yeah, but you felt a sense of comfort with them and familiarity, because you know them. They're almost like they're almost like the mirror in your bedroom. That you know, they're there. They're something that you can bounce off without feeling that you're conscious, or that I'm trying to impress. So you're there with your mobile phone, and that becomes your mirror in your room, and you can be yourself more so probably than you could if you went into the church and it was full of physical human beings right in front of you, all staring up at you, like, oh, wise one, tell us what you have to say today.
You know, no, and it's true. Like, I had been in the parish only really since the previous middle of August, and we went into lockdown in March. But I can safely say nobody in the parish had heard me sing, and there's very good reasons for that. Nobody in the parish had ever seen me dance or do any of those sorts of things, because again, you wouldn't. But whereas if I had been working with young people in the area, you might end up doing those things, you know,
that's
because
where you felt comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
And in a sense, COVID has given you the comfort to be yourself to the masses, to people who didn't. And do you think now, once lockdown and all this just nonsense, and because I just don't understand how you can actually play hurling and football and soccer and jump into scrums in rugby tackles, and you can have a full plane load of people all wearing masks, but you can only have 50 inside in St. John's Cathedral that holds 1,000.
Yeah, it's difficult times, you know, it's difficult times like that. And so, but your point really is true around, like, when people do come back to normality, will I have parked all that stuff anyway? Because I'm back to the self-conscious in front of people way of being. If it's young people and the children for communion or confirmation, I'm always a little freer. But I am conscious that there are good people who'd be coming to Mass, and if they saw me leaping about and doing stuff, for a lot of them, they'd be just going...
They might be very disappointed if you don't, Chris.
I don't know. They might be very disappointed if I do too. So we'll
I mean, it's like a Whoopi Goldberg moment in Sister Act.
Yeah.
They're all going to turn up to see Chris O'Donnell rocking it out on the altar.
To be honest, I suppose I'd be very conscious if people come to Mass. I hope they come for the relationship with the good God above us, and we're only like conduits.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter as long as they come. Once they come, then you can get them to stay. But it's the steps that they take to actually walk into the church. Do you know, I found that the most difficult, and I said, you know, there's people who will probably haven't gone inside a church since they were teenagers. But the fact that you know the church doors are open and you can walk in, it's not until this COVID and the doors were shut that I think people started to miss the fact that, okay, I haven't been in there since I was 15, 16, but I knew at any stage I could just walk in. Now I can't. You've got to ring up, or you've got to wait until the doors are open, and there's only so many allowed in. I mean, I don't know, it must be a very intelligent virus that it knows, oh, it's a wedding or a funeral, but you can't have the same amount for Mass on Sunday.
Yeah, my sadness has, like, the one thing I keep saying is around funerals, and also probably for weddings as well, but I'm very conscious of funerals. We've seen funerals with 10 people, with 25 people. You know, I just wish that there could be some allowance made in safe ways, because we'll always follow health, guidance, because our faith is about kind of putting our sacrifice at the best of times. That's what Jesus did. You know, man has no greater love than to lay down his life for his fellow man. So as a church, we have no greater love than to make our people safe. So, you know,
isn't it the essence of faith to believe that when I go into the church, I'm going to be safe?
Well, as long as we kind of, because I'm conscious I've been in situations whereby, as long as our faith will always be tempered with that guidance and that reality, because I know I've been in situations where somebody said to me, I'm saying my prayers, and I'm like, that's good, but you have to make sure you apply, God will want you to do things safely as well. Like me saying my prayers and licking shopping trolleys isn't really, So like we always have to be conscious that God is great, but he likes us to cooperate with his grace.
I wasn't expecting you to say go ahead licking shopping trolleys.
Yeah, but it's just that sense that we could fall into a trap of saying that because I kind of maybe saying my prayers, God won't let this happen to me. I've sadly seen lovely people like die of this disease, and like it doesn't differentiate between anybody, age, creed, anything. So look, it's just a very delicate time. So we're all for keeping people safe, but I would always advocate that for a family in grief, in most churches, an extra 25 would get most family in the door safely and spread out and all that. And I'm just saddened because I see so many funerals where you come outside and there's as much grief outside, and often grandchildren. It just would break your heart. But look, it's a pandemic. It's
extraordinary times.
Yeah.
But Father Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
No bothers.
Being my guest and chatting to me.
No worries.
I can understand now the allure that youngsters have. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Well, I interviewed Father Ray Kelly, and it was the same. I got the same sense from Ray Kelly as I did from you. He's a
better singer than me, though.
Huh?
He's a better singer than I am.
Well, he's a fabulous singer, but a friend of mine had said, you have to get Father Ray on. You have to get Father Ray on, because he was singing, and he had this innocence about him that everything kind of came to him later in life. The singing, the opportunities came to him. later in life, and he just seems to be just going with it, and he seems to, and there's that innocence. He's not shy, and deprecating, but he's there's that innocence, that feeling of awe at what he's achieved.
Right.
And I get the same sense from you, that you're everything is new and exciting in your life, and you embrace things.
We just step out into the future in Providence, you know, like, and as I've said to you before, I don't really think about where I'd like to be. I just play what's in front of me, you know, and that's all you can do. And that's life, really, you know.
Life.
Yeah, we're not guaranteed tomorrow, you know, so like, it's not easy, and we're going through difficult times, and I pray people will be able to stay well in them. But we can only do life day at a time, you know, and tomorrow we'll have enough worries for tomorrow. So let's just kind of live today and try and do it well. And then there'll be days when we can't do that, but others might help us. So look, we'll live in hope, as they say, live in hope.
And die in despair.
And die in despair. I know I will be dying in despair. I'm fairly sure of that, but that's okay, you know.
Well, Chris, thank you so much again for being my guest, and that's the perfect place to end the interview.
Right.
Live in hope, die in despair.
Yeah, and good luck with the Fair Juice. Good luck with the interviews. It was lovely to meet you.
Thanks, right. Father. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Rise and shine. Okay. It's the Lord telling Noah that there's going to be a flood. He needs to build an ark. He's building the ark out of hickory, barky. Just that's the one thing. You'll see me make a tree. A hickory, barky tree. That's what that is. Everything else you'll make up. So, right, Joe Wicks, eat your heart out. Up you get. Get everybody up, right? And if you're on your own and you're able, sure, think about it, okay? But mind yourself, because you might need a cert from a doctor to do this. But anyway, get your mum and dads up at home if they're watching. Everybody get up and do it. We're going to sing, okay? So it goes. The Lord said to Noah, there's gonna be a floody. Lord said to Noah, there's gonna be a floody. Get those children out of the muddy children of the Lord. So rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, children of the Lord. The Lord said to Noah to build him an arky. Lord said to Noah to build him an arky. Built it out of hickory, barky, children of the Lord. So rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, children of the Lord. The animals, they came in in twosy woosies. Animals, they came in in twosy woosies. Elephants and kangaroosies, children of the Lord. So rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, children of the Lord. It rained and poured for 40 daisy waisies. Rained and poured for 40 daisy waisies. Drove those animals crazy, children of the Lord. So rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, children of the Lord. The sun came out and the sun came and dried up the landy. Sun came and dried up the landy. Everything was fine and dandy, children of the Lord. So rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, children of the Lord. The animals, they came out in treesies, treesies, the animals, they came out in treesies, treesies, grizzly bears and chimpanzees, children of the Lord. So, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, children of the Lord. Once more with feeling, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, children of the Lord.